right now we have an absolute tragedy of epic and maybe historic proportions happening in Aleppo, Syria. And the pro-government forces in Syria, along with what appear to be Iraqi-backed Shia militia and the Russians, are besieging Aleppo, which was held by rebel forces and is now mainly, because of this siege, held by Syrian and to some degree Iraqi and to some degree Russian forces. Boy, Syria is a mess. But this one is unique in the atrocities that have happened. So let me break that down for you. The New York Times reporting today, pro-government forces retaking the eastern neighborhoods of the besieged Syrian city of Aleppo have killed at least 82 civilians. The United Nations estimated on Tuesday in what one official called a complete meltdown of humanity. Now, in wars like this, especially where there's not a lot of media allowed, there's propaganda on all sides. So the Russians say, oh, no, it's not us, it is the terrorists. But wait a minute, the rebels control the city. The people fighting the rebels are not ISIS, they're pro-government forces, and the Russians are on the side of the Syrian government. So that makes no sense. And it's not like I blindly trust the American government, no, but the United Nations is a much more trustworthy source. Now, if you're a Republican and you hate everything around the world, then you're going to say, no, I'm not going to believe it. Putin's our new best friend, and I think he's a great guy. And I'll believe whatever he says because Trump says he's right. Do whatever you want, okay? But for all the rest of the reasonable people in the world, here the United Nations has to be really careful. It can't make any of the nation states that angry. So the things that they say are usually conservative. They're trying to not make wild accusations because they don't want to make the Russians angry. They don't want to make us angry. They've got to balance things out. But one of the things that the United Nations does, and that's why I actually really like them, is that they don't build hobbit homes and they're not looking to take over our country or any other country. But what they do is help people who are in dire, dire need, whether it's through programs like UNICEF and poverty, in tackling poverty, or it's programs like this where they help rescue refugees and make sure as little of them as possible get killed. They don't have a lot of power, but they try the best they can. And one of the things that they do is they give us information. So that's why I'm telling you, within the context of the mess in Syria, they are one of the more reputable sources. That's why this story is so alarming, because it's coming from them as well as other sources, but they're more trustworthy. So let's take a look at what's more in the news here from the New York Times. The death toll recorded in 4 neighborhoods, Bustan, al-Qasr, al-Fardous, and Kallaseh and Al Saleheen, included 11 women and 13 children, some shot in the streets as they attempted to flee the fighting, and Rupert Colville, a spokesman for the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, said. That is gruesome. Now, there's a doctor, and by the way, some of the bravest people in the world are doctors that go into Aleppo to try to save people in the midst of that bombing and massacres. Now, there's a doctor that some of these sources trust that has come out with news saying many children, possibly more than 100, unaccompanied or separated from their families, are trapped in a building under heavy attack in East Aleppo. So we don't know what their fate is, but there are a lot of civilians and a lot of civilians being killed. We don't know where that building is or what's going to happen to those kids. Then you've got the ambassador to France, French ambassador, Francois Delattre, who says this is, quote, the worst humanitarian tragedy of the 21st century unfolding before our eyes. So this is very, very heavy talk about what's happening right now. Now, let me go back to the UN, because then we've got Mr. Colville there, who is part of the efforts to sort all this out. And he said that pro-government forces had also reportedly entered homes and killed those they found inside, including women and children. This keeps getting worse and worse. More here from New York Times. Also on Tuesday, the French government said it was deeply concerned about reports of a chemical attack in the eastern suburbs of the city of Hama a day earlier. The Union of Medical Care and Relief Organizations and International Coalition of Human Rights Groups said the attack had killed at least 93 civilians and wounded 300, but those numbers could not be confirmed independently. So that's why you've got different sources here, and take what they say with different degrees of how much you trust them based on their track record. And I'm trying to be as clear as I can with you. Now we're going to go back to Rupert Colville, the guy I quoted earlier. He's the United Nations High Commissioner on human rights, and he's their spokesperson. So he says, civilians have paid a brutal price during this conflict, and we are filled with the deepest foreboding for those who remain in this last hellish corner of opposition-held eastern Aleppo. When you thought it couldn't get worse, those dire warnings continue. And now this is from the Foreign Minister of France. He says the cold-blooded murders of entire families on the ground who were deemed close to the opposition, summary executions, including of women and children, people burned alive in their homes, the continuation of systematic targeting of hospitals, their staff, and their patients all continue. Now, the French do have a side here, so the quotes I read you from the French you could take with whatever degree of grain of salt that you want. The human rights groups, their job is to try to help innocent civilians. I trust them more. And then the United Nations, again, does not want to anger any of its states, but is trying their best to protect human rights. So finally, I'm going to go to one more person from there. Jan Egeland, the United Nations humanitarian advisor, said the governments of Russia and Syria were accountable for any and all atrocities that the victorious militias in Aleppo are now committing. And again, if you're wondering, why is it Iraqi-backed Shia militias in Syria helping the Syrian government? Well, because the Syrian government is aligned with Shias across the Middle East, including Iran. And if you remember, we toppled the government of Iraq, of course, you remember that. And in their democracy, since there are more Shia than Sunni in Iraq, they wound up with a Shia government that is closer to Iran and to the Shia-aligned government in Syria. So thanks to us toppling Saddam Hussein, what we've set up is, a wall of Shia dominance there with Iran, Iraq, and now those guys helping Syria to keep Shia dominance there. Now, a lot of people are upset about this because of the Shia-Sunni conflict, and we've got a lot of allies on the Sunni side of that conflict. The Saudis, all the other Gulf countries. Israel is more on the Sunni side than the Shia side. So this is a holy mess here. Now, in terms of what the Russians have done, I'm not a person who thinks the Russians are the boogeymen, everything is their fault. At the same time, I'm not in the camp who says the Russians can do no wrong, so any talk of Russians means you're distracting. No, we're not distraction. The Russians have completely enabled this according to independent sources. So now when you ask the Republicans about that, we got Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, one of the biggest Trump supporters, one of Putin's biggest supporters in the U.S. Congress. This is unbelievable. Anyway, he goes on Morning Joe on MSNBC, and he's going to try to excuse the actions here. Let's watch.
The bottom line is we are in war with radical Islam. We are at war with people who want to destroy us. You're talking about a no-fly zone where we are shooting down Russian airplanes?
No.
We need to be working with the Russians to defeat radical Islam.
I asked about the women and children that the Russians were targeting.
Let me tell you something. We allied with Stalin. We allied with Stalin in order to defeat Hitler. Well, now, Stalin was a horrible man. He murdered millions of people, but we knew Hitler was a bigger threat. Today, the biggest threat is radical Islam to our safety. And if we keep trying to focus on all of the faults of Russia so that we can't work with them to defeat this common enemy, you're not doing any service to the people of the United States or the cause of peace.
That's unbelievable. He just did a favorable comparison to Stalin. So he said, maybe the Russians are killing everybody in Aleppo, but hey, we partnered up with Stalin, didn't we? Now, the rebels held Aleppo, and it is enormously confusing, the different factions in Syria. We've tried to help break that down here on the show. But no one is arguing that ISIS unilaterally held Aleppo. There are many different rebel factions. ISIS's headquarters is in a completely different city. It's in Raqqa. So for this guy to come in and pretend that everybody in Aleppo is ISIS when the UN is saying, no, you're murdering civilians, and it is held by different rebels, it's just saying, come on, man, they're Muslims. Let the Russians kill them, and let the Iraqi Shia militias aligned with Iran just kill them. What's the big deal? We allied with Stalin anyway. And these are Republicans who are saying this. The guys who told me for my whole life to watch out for the Russians. So, look, finally, this is not about petty politics, and there are no easy answers here. So I'm not saying let's go get the Russians. Let's put ground troops in the middle of Aleppo or Raqqa or any other parts of Syria. Those are dangerous ideas. And nobody, I don't know why everybody keeps talking about shooting down planes, whether they're on the left or on the right, shooting down Russian planes and starting World War III. No one has suggested that. And, you know, I have not come anywhere near that. No reasonable person has come near that, okay? So, on the other hand, just because you're not shooting down Russian planes or putting ground troops in the middle of Syria doesn't mean, Aleppo, who cares? Just kill them all. Or no, we're not killing them anyway. Even better, just look aside while the Russians and the Iranian-backed militias and the Iraqi-backed militias and the Syrian government butcher these civilians. No easy answers here, but the answer is not indifference. So now with Trump in charge, it looks like his answer is, what do you need, Vladimir? So you want me to step aside and let you run roughshod over Aleppo or any other Syrian city? Yes, sir. And there's Rohrbacher on national television confirming that is going to be the new policy. Even if he's Stalin, we're just going to step aside and let him do it. We need independent media to make sure that we hold corporate media accountable. The people that can make that happen is you. You make the Young Turks possible. tytnetwork.com/join. Join us. Be the revolution.